Hey everybody, it's Crystal, and I just got in from a run, got my protein shake, and thought I'd do my weekly dose of the Sweat Pink Ambassadors blog post. I'm going to be traveling, got some presentations to do for work, and so wanted to make sure you all got to hear what I had to say on this topic. This week's topic or question was for us to get in the kitchen and bake for all of you a recipe, share with all of you out there a unique recipe that we had, and I'm a huge baker. So what I decided to do was, instead of focusing on one recipe, we all know baking isn't the most healthy, and as fitness people who are striving to eat healthier, I have decided to share with you some substitutions to make baking a better alternative. Now I'll start with some of the more common things and work my way up to my secret ingredients to share with all of you. Now to start off, we all know baking involves two big things, butter and sugar. Now, in place of butter, butter basically, if you don't know, is just an oil. So realistically, you can use any oil out there and substitute that for your butter. What I've heard a lot of people like to use are things like canola oil, or even a coconut oil is becoming more and more popular. But personally, I really like to use a sugar-free applesauce. The one caveat with applesauce is it's not a one-to-one ratio. I found you want to use about 3/4 of a cup to 1 cup of butter that the recipe calls for. And if we move to sugar, obviously every recipe out there, baking, we all love to use sugar. That's what makes it sweet. That's why it's a dessert, and that's why we love it. So in place of sugar, you can use typical sugar substitutes, but you can also use things like honey or agave nectar, and depending on what you use, it can kind of change the flavor a little bit of the recipe, so keep that in mind. Some have a more bolder flavor, some it's a little less strong, and so just use what you want to use and get the flavor you want. You feel free to play around with that. Now, if we move to more our milk products, our creams and things like that, what do I like to use? Well, in place of sour cream, I think it's really easy to substitute Greek yogurt. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of Greek yogurt on its own, but it's an awesome substitute for sour cream, works perfect, and obviously much healthier. Now, what about cream cheese? This again is in a lot of recipes, and there's a couple different things you can use, but personally my favorite is cottage cheese. I like to puree it up so it's nice and smooth, just like the cream cheese, and put that right in like you would. And finally, heavy cream. Now, what's an alternative for this? A lot of people struggle with some things like this, and actually my favorite thing to use is coconut milk. Obviously, there's a lot of research out there about the benefits of coconut milk, especially for those of us with active lifestyles. So I highly encourage any recipe or frosting that calls for a heavy whipping type cream to use coconut milk. Now, the one thing you have to be careful of is that coconut milk isn't going to whip up like some of these other creams. So just keep that in mind in how you mix it. So on to more of my secret ingredients. In place of flour, there's a lot of different options. You can use a ton of different beans. Personally, I like to use, especially for brownie recipes, I like to use black beans. It adds some protein in there, and you can't even taste it. It's completely masked by the other ingredients. And my number one secret ingredient I'm going to share with all of you, so make sure you listen closely here, it's beets. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I absolutely cannot stand beets. Any form of beets, I hate the smell of beets, I hate the taste of beets, I just don't like being around beets, but I'm willing to suck it up to put it in a recipe for a number of reasons. One, the health benefits can't be matched. Beets are just awesome all around for you. They've been proven more and more. They help with endurance and a lot of other things. So they're great for their nutritional value. But the other great thing about beets is they actually make the cake taste better. Especially if you use them in a chocolate cake. I personally use them in a red velvet cake in place of all the bottles of food coloring, that artificial red stuff that you put in that's no good for you. And what I found is it actually brings out that chocolate flavor. Now, my coworkers have voted hands down their favorite cake that I made was one that I made with beets. Now, no one could guess what that secret ingredient was. They all said it was the best cake I ever made, and the reason why is because the beets, again, they draw out, they make that chocolate, that cocoa powder in Red Velvet specifically, they make it a more pronounced flavor, which gives you a better cake and a healthier alternative. Now, I'd love to hear what kind of substitutions all of you use, especially when it comes to baking. I'm always looking for new ideas, trying to keep things healthy, but I love to bake. So feel free in the comments below to share with me your favorite substitutions for baking. Have a good one.